I still remember the first time I saw her. It was one of those days where the air feels lighter, where everything seems brighter than usual, as if the world itself had decided to pause for a moment just for me. She walked into my life without warning, and from the very first second, something inside me shifted. Her presence was magnetic. Her smile wasn't just a smile, was a promise, a quiet whisper of hope, of happiness, of something I hadn't felt in years. I met her at a small gathering organized by a friend. I don't even remember the exact words we exchanged at first. My mind was too occupied with watching her, the way her hair caught the sunlight, the slight tilt of her head when she laughed, the sparkle in her eyes. It was hypnotic. I remember thinking almost to myself, I could follow her anywhere. I would go anywhere just to see that smile again. She noticed me staring, of course. Most people would have felt embarrassed, maybe even annoyed. But she walked straight toward me, curiosity and mischief in her eyes. "You've been staring at me for 10 minutes, she said, her voice soft yet teasing with just the right hint of laughter. I froze for a second, not knowing what to say, but something inside me, something deeper than logic, made me smile. And from that moment, a connection was formed, subtle yet undeniable. We talked that night for hours, or maybe it was minutes time, seemed to bend around her presence. She laughed at my awkward jokes, asked questions that made me think. And somehow, without even realizing it, she made me feel understood in a way no one else ever had. By the end of the evening, I was certain of one thing. She wasn't just anyone. She was someone I wanted in my life, someone I wanted to build a future with, even if I didn't yet know what that future looked like. The days that followed were a blur of calls, messages, and meetups. We explored the city together, sat in quiet cafes where no one else seemed to exist, and shared stories about our lives, our dreams, our fears. Every moment felt like it had been scripted by fate itself, and with every laugh, every touch, every shared glance, I felt myself falling deeper than I had ever fallen before. I told my friends about her. I couldn't help it. I was proud, excited, almost obsessed with sharing this newfound happiness. "She's incredible," I would say, my voice trembling slightly with excitement. "You have to meet her. You won't believe it. She's perfect." My friends smiled, sometimes teasing me, sometimes warning me. "Be careful, man," they would say. "She seems too perfect." "Are you sure this is real?" I would nod, a confident smile plastered on my face, but inside, I felt a flicker of doubt I didn't want to acknowledge. Months passed, and our bond only grew stronger. I introduced her to my family, proud and a little nervous. I wanted her to see the people who shaped me, and I wanted them to see why I was so enamored by her. And at first, everything was perfect. My mother, usually reserved and cautious, took an immediate liking to her. My father, a man who rarely smiled, and whose approval was hard to earn, seemed genuinely pleased. He praised her intelligence, her charm, her grace. I remember thinking, with a warm, unguarded heart, this is it. Everything I ever wanted. We talked about the future, the kind of future couples usually dream about, but rarely plan in reality. I imagined us in a small home, with morning coffee and laughter echoing through the rooms. I imagined traveling together, sharing every milestone, every small joy, every silent comfort that only true love can bring. I imagined waking up next to her every day for the rest of my life. It felt like the kind of happiness movies promised, but reality rarely delivered. I even started planning our engagement. Little details, the ring, the setting, the perfect day to ask her to be mine forever. I would spend hours thinking about how to make it special. Not just a moment, but a memory she would never forget. Every smile she gave me, every touch, every whispered "I love you," reinforced the certainty that I had found someone extraordinary. But as much as I wanted to believe in perfection, life has a cruel way of hiding shadows beneath the brightest light. And I didn't see the shadows creeping in, the faint cracks appearing where everything seemed flawless. It's strange, looking back, how the mind convinces itself that everything is fine, even when subtle signs whisper warnings that you choose to ignore. I ignored them. The little moments that didn't quite fit, the slight hesitation in her voice when certain topics came up, the way she sometimes glanced at my father just a little too long, the unexplained absences that she always had a reason for. My heart, so full of love, refused to acknowledge the unease. I wanted to believe, because believing felt safer than facing any other possibility. I convinced myself that everything was perfect, that every smile and every laugh was genuine, that the trust I placed in her and in my father was unbreakable. And for a while, it worked. I was happy, truly happy, in a way I had never been before. It felt like the world itself had aligned in my favor, like the universe had decided to reward me for years of patience, for being a good son, a good friend, a good person. But little did I know that happiness was fragile. I had built a world of glass, and the cracks, though invisible to me at the time, were already forming. The storm was coming, though I had no idea it would arrive not from some stranger, not from fate, but from the very people I trusted most in this world. And yet, in that moment, I could not have imagined anything else. All I saw was the warmth of her hand in mine, the comfort of her presence, the endless possibility of a future together. I felt invincible, untouchable, the perfect beginning. But sometimes, the perfect beginnings are the ones that hide the most devastating endings. For a while, I convinced myself that everything was perfect. I told myself that love was all I needed, that trust was unshakable, and that happiness meant I could ignore the little whispers of doubt in my mind. But life has a way of whispering truths when you least expect it. And soon, I started hearing those whispers. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. Little things that didn't make sense at first, a glance here, a hesitation there, a laugh that seemed just a little too forced. At first, I brushed it off. I'm overthinking, I told myself. She loves me. My father is just being friendly. Everything is fine. But the unease lingered, growing like a shadow behind my happiness, darkening even the brightest moments. I started noticing the way she would smile at my father, not in the casual, polite way people smile at their elders, but in a way that made my stomach twist. A smile that lasted a little too long, a tone that was slightly too soft, a laugh that seemed too intimate. Every time I saw it, a cold knot formed in my chest. I wanted to ignore it, but I couldn't. The mind remembers everything, even the things you don't want it to. Then came the phone calls, hushed conversations that she would abruptly end when I walked into the room, text messages that disappeared from her phone too quickly for me to read. Every small secret, every unexplained absence started to pile up in my mind like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to complete. I tried to convince myself that I was imagining things, that paranoia was taking over, that love had made me insecure. But one evening changed everything. I had come home earlier than usual, hoping to surprise her. I imagined the joy on her face, the warmth of her hug, the way she always made everything feel right. But as soon as I stepped into the apartment, the air felt different. Heavy, wrong. I froze. Hearing laughter from the living room, soft, familiar laughter, but not meant for me. Curiosity, or maybe something darker, forced me to look closer, and that's when I saw them. My fiancé and my father, sitting together on the couch, talking in a way that was intimate, too intimate. My heart pounded and I couldn't move. I wanted to run, to scream, to demand answers, but fear and disbelief rooted me to the spot. They didn't notice me, at least not yet. The sound of their laughter, it felt like a betrayal in motion, a cruel joke that the universe was playing on me. I backed away quietly, retreating to my room, but my mind was racing, spinning a web of questions and doubts. How could this be real? How could the people I trusted the most betray me in this way? I tried to convince myself that I had misunderstood, that it was innocent, that perhaps my imagination had painted a lie in the shadows. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. In the following days, I began paying closer attention. Every secretive phone call, every excuse, every fleeting moment that seemed out of place now became significant. I watched as patterns emerged, patterns that I could no longer ignore. The realization hit me slowly, like water seeping into a crack in a dam. By the time I fully understood what was happening, the foundation of my world was already shaking. I caught her laughing at a message, her face lighting up in a way that used to make my heart melt but now made it shatter. I saw my father pause just slightly when she entered the room, a fleeting moment of something unspoken passing between them. And every time I tried to speak about it, to ask, to confront, I was met with confusion, with denial. With your imagining things, but I wasn't. I knew the truth was there, hiding just beneath the surface, waiting for me to see it. Trust is a fragile thing. It isn't just given, it's built brick by brick, over time. And once it cracks, even slightly, everything becomes unstable. I felt that instability growing within me, spreading to every corner of my life. I questioned every memory, every smile, every shared secret. What had been real, what had been a lie, and the thought that the people I loved most could be the ones undermining me. It was unbearable. I tried to hold on to the good moments, to remember the warmth, the laughter, the feeling that everything was perfect. But the more I tried to convince myself, the more the cracks widened. Every small hint of deceit was like a splinter, piercing deeper and deeper until my chest ached with the weight of suspicion. One night, unable to sleep, I walked through the apartment, silent and cautious. I checked their phones, not to invade privacy, but because my heart demanded answers I could no longer ignore. And what I found confirmed everything. Hidden messages, secret meetings, words that shouldn't have existed between the two people I trusted most. Words that shattered my perception of reality. I felt anger, of course, but more than that, I felt a deep, consuming sadness. The kind of sadness that leaves your chest tight, your hands trembling, and your mind racing with questions you don't want to ask. How could someone you love betray you? How could someone you respect so deeply lie to your face every day? The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever imagined. And yet, even in that pain, something else stirred within me. Something darker. Something that whispered, "You will not be destroyed. You will not let this define you." From that moment on, nothing felt the same. The apartment, once a sanctuary of warmth and laughter, now felt cold, heavy with unspoken truths. Every shared memory was tainted by suspicion. Every glance from her or my father made my heart pound in anticipation of another lie. Another secret, another crack in the fragile world I had built. And yet, even in that darkness, I refused to crumble completely. Because I realized something crucial. If I let anger and betrayal consume me, I would lose more than just Trusty, would lose myself. I had to stay strong. I had to find the truth, no matter how painful, no matter how devastating. I had to uncover the cracks before they became a chasm too wide to cross. It was the beginning of a journey I never wanted to take, a journey into betrayal, deceit, and the darkest corners of human trust. And as I prepared myself to face what was coming, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The truth has a way of finding you, even when you don't want it to. And sometimes it strikes like a lightning bolt, leaving nothing untouched in its path. For weeks, I had felt the unestimable, nagging doubts that had begun to creep into my mind. I tried to ignore them, to push them aside, to tell myself that everything was fine. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. And one night, I could no longer deny it. It was late. The city outside was quiet, the streets almost empty, the world asleep under a blanket of stars. I couldn't sleep either. Thoughts tumbled through my mind, relentless, refusing to let me rest. I tried to calm myself, but my heart demanded answers. My instincts, sharp and insistent, told me that ignoring the truth would only make the inevitable hurt worse. I found myself reaching for my phone, not knowing what I expected to see. Maybe I hoped for reassurance, for proof that I was over. Maybe I was ready to confront a lie. I opened a messaging app, scrolling absent-mindedly, until my eyes landed on something that made my blood run cold. A message not meant for me, or at least that's what I tried to tell myself. The words burned into my mind. "I can't stop thinking about you. Meeting tonight." I stared at it for a long time, unable to breathe, unable to think. The sender's name appeared above the message. My father. My father, the man who raised me, the man I trusted more than anyone else in this world. My hands shook as I reread the words, hoping, praying, convincing myself that I had misread something, that it was some terrible mistake. But the truth is relentless. Reality does not lie. For a moment, I wanted to drop the phone, to walk away, to pretend I had seen nothing. But something deep inside me, the part of me that still demanded honesty, demanded justice, wouldn't let me. My mind raced through memories I had shared with them, trying to separate the moments that were genuine from those that had been tainted. And slowly, painfully, I realized the depth of what had been happening. I spent the night in a haze of disbelief. Every laugh, every smile, every shared secret now seemed like a carefully constructed lie. I remembered the evenings when they would laugh together, the moments when I walked into a room only to feel the subtle tension in the air, the way my father would glance at her with something I couldn't identify at the time, Everything made sense no end, yet nothing made sense. How could the people I loved most betray me so completely? I knew I couldn't confront them immediately. Rage clouded my thoughts, but I also knew that anger alone would not protect me. Confrontation without proof would only give them the chance to twist the truth, to manipulate, to make me look like the irrational one. I needed facts. I needed undeniable evidence. Over the next few days, I became obsessed. Every message, every call, every secret interaction had to be accounted for. I started paying attention to the small things I had overlooked before, the way they would leave the room. Suddenly, when I entered, the subtle tones in their voices when speaking to each other, the hidden glances that lasted just a second too long. I became a silent observer, a shadow in my own home, gathering pieces of the puzzle. And then I found it, the proof I had been searching for, hidden in plain sight. A series of messages, carefully erased and hidden at first, now revealed through a simple backup. Conversations that spoke of meetings, of promises, of secrets that were never meant for my eyes. Words that were intimate in ways that shook me to my core. My hands trembled as I scrolled through them. My heart raced, my chest tightened, and my mind screamed in disbelief. Every line I read confirmed what I had feared. They were betraying me, together, behind my back. Every small doubt, every uneasy feeling, every hint of mistrust was true. The people I had trusted most had been lying to me from the very beginning. It wasn't just the messages. I discovered photos shared between them in secret moments captured that were never meant for me. Evidence of late-night meetings, conversations full of emotion. My world was unraveling before my eyes, and yet I could not look away. I needed to see the full picture, no matter how painful it was. The pain was sharp, like a blade slicing through my chest. Anger surged, a fire that threatened to consume me. But even in that rage, I knew I had to remain calm. If I lost control now, I would lose everything, not just the chance for justice, but my dignity, my clarity, my sense of self. I forced myself to breathe, to step back, to think. The more I uncovered, the clearer the betrayal became. I replayed moments in my mind, analyzing every detail. How she had smiled at me, how my father had spoken to me, how every interaction that had seemed innocent had been layered with deceit. It was overwhelming, suffocating, and yet it was also liberating. The truth, as devastating as it was, finally gave me clarity. I could no longer live in the shadows of uncertainty. I had the evidence, I had the knowledge, and now I had a choice. Do I confront them immediately, fueled by anger and betrayal, or do I plan carefully, with precision, to reclaim my life and ensure they faced the consequences of their actions? I knew deep down that patience would serve me better. Impulsive action might satisfy a momentary desire for revenge, but it could also backfire, leaving me powerless and exposed. So I waited. I observed. Every small detail became a thread in the tapestry of their deception, each piece bringing me closer to understanding the full extent of their betrayal. And as I pieced it together, I felt a strange mix of emotions: sorrow for the loss of trust, fury at the deceit, and an emerging sense of empowerment. The betrayal, as painful as it was, had awakened something within me. A resolve I hadn't known I possessed. A determination to take control of my life, to expose the truth, to ensure that the people who had hurt me would face the consequences of their actions. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I thought of every laugh we had shared, every moment I had cherished, every plan I had made for a future I had believed was real, and I mourned it. I mourned the innocence I had carried, the trust I had given freely, and the love I had believed was reciprocated. But even in my grief, I understood something vital. Grief alone changes nothing. Action does. Strategy does. Patience and clarity do. I knew the journey ahead would be painful. The confrontation, the exposure, the inevitable fallout it would not be easy. But I also knew that I could not allow this betrayal to define me. I could not let it destroy me. The truth was mine now, and with it came power, responsibility, and the chance to reclaim my life. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange calm. Not happiness, not yet, but clarity. I knew what had to be done. I knew that the people I loved most had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and I knew that I would face them, not as the naive person I had once been, but as someone who understood the full extent of their deceit and was ready to act. The discovery had changed everything. Nothing would ever be the same again. I could feel the weight of the coming storm pressing down on me, but for the first time, I felt prepared to face it. I had the evidence, I had the clarity, and I had the determination. The next steps would define the rest of my life. And whatever happened, I would no longer be a passive observer in my own story. I would take control. I would confront the betrayal, and I would ensure that the truth, no matter how painful, would finally come to light. I remember sitting in my room that night, the weight of discovery pressing down on me like a stone I could not lift. I had the evidence. I knew the truth. I had watched, listened, and pieced together every secret conversation, every hidden meeting, every small betrayal, and yet, I hesitated. The question that haunted me relentlessly was simple but terrifying. Do I confront them now or wait? Anger roared inside me like a wildfire, threatening to consume every rational thought. I wanted to storm into the living room, throw the messages in front of them, and demand answers. I wanted them to feel the shock, the fear, the devastation I had felt every time I realized what had been happening behind my back. I wanted them to see the consequences of their deceit immediately, to watch as the illusion they had created shattered in front of their eyes. But then, a small voice inside me whispered, "Patience." I knew, deep down, that confrontation without strategy would be dangerous. If I acted impulsively, fueled only by anger and betrayal, I risked losing control. They were skilled at manipulation, after all. My father could charm, persuade, and twist any narrative to suit himself. She had always known how to read me, to exploit my emotions when it served her. If I confronted them too soon, they could turn the tables, make me look paranoid, unstable, even cruel. And I couldn't afford that. Not now. So I decided to wait, to observe, to collect more evidence. Every text, every hidden call, every meeting I could uncover became a brick in the wall of proof I was building. I wasn't planning revenge, yet not fully. I was planning clarity, certainty, and control. I had to make sure that when the moment came, there would be no doubt, no room for denial, no escape. Even as I waited, the tension in the house grew unbearable. Every laugh between them, every shared glance, every subtle gesture felt like a dagger aimed directly at my chest. I walked through the apartment like a ghost, listening, observing, recording in my mind everything that could be used later. I had become both the betrayed and the detective in my own life, and the weight of that dual role was exhausting. One evening, I made a calculated move. I brought up a seemingly innocent topic, something I knew would trigger a reaction. My fiancée laughed nervously, then quickly glanced at my father, her eyes darting just enough to betray a flicker of guilt. I pretended not to notice. I smiled, kept my tone light, my voice calm, hiding the storm that raged within me. I wanted them to know, subtly, that I was aware, not fully, not yet, but enough to unsettle them. There's power in uncertainty, I realized. The knowledge that someone is watching, observing, piecing together the truth, can shake even the most confident liar. Over the next few days, I tested them. I left hints, small breadcrumbs that suggested I knew more than I actually did. I watched as their behavior shifted: furtive glances, forced smiles, subtle defensiveness. It was confirmation. They were aware of my awareness, and it unnerved them. And with every unnerved glance, my resolve strengthened. I would not be the victim here. I would not crumble under their deceit. But even with the evidence and the growing confidence, doubt crept in at night. I questioned myself. Am I overreacting? Is my anger blinding me? Could I be wrong? My mind replayed every memory, every shared laugh, every moment I had once cherished. It was maddening, this tug-of-war between rage and reason, between grief and determination. Then came a moment that changed everything. I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear, a heated discussion between them, filled with tension, whispers, and veiled threats. Words like "he can't find out yet" and "we need to be careful" drifted through the walls and lodged themselves firmly in my mind. My hands shook. My heart pounded. This wasn't just an emotional affair. They were scheming, plotting, deliberately hiding their actions. It was the confirmation I needed. Waiting, observing, and strategizing had given me clarity. I could no longer ignore what was happening. The betrayal was real deliberate, and ongoing. And now, with undeniable proof, I faced a choice again. But this time, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I would confront her first. Carefully, strategically. Not with blind fury, but with controlled, calculated precision. I needed to see her reaction, to hear her words, to observe whether her lies could withstand the truth, and I would do it without giving away my full hand. The confrontation was terrifying. I felt my pulse quicken, my stomach churn, my hands clench. I had rehearsed what I would say, how I would act, how I would maintain my calm. I reminded myself constantly, control equals power. Anger equals vulnerability. I waited for the right moment when she was alone, thinking she could relax, thinking she was safe from discovery. And then I began. I asked her questions, simple, innocuous questions at first. Her answers were smooth, polished, carefully constructed. But I watched closely. I saw the micro-expressions, the flickers of hesitation, the slight tremor in her voice. It was enough. Not yet full confirmation, but enough to tell me that my instincts were correct. She had been lying. She had been hiding something from me. And as I watched her falter, I felt the first flicker of empowerment ignite within me. I was no longer blind. I was no longer powerless. But I didn't stop there. I had to confront my father next. Not yet fully, not yet with all the evidence. First, I needed to see if he could manipulate, if he could charm, if he could turn the situation around. I watched him, studied him, waited for him to slip. And as the days passed, it became clear that even he, with all his experience, could not completely mask the guilt that now shadowed his expressions. Confrontation or silence? That question had haunted me for days, maybe weeks. And now, I understood the answer. Silence, carefully planned and strategically executed, was my weapon. Anger would only cloud my judgment. Impulse would only give them the upper hand. But patience, observation, and calculated confrontation, that would give me control, clarity, and ultimately, justice. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized something important. Betrayal is not just a shock, a moment of disbelief. Betrayal is a test. It tests your strength, your intelligence, your patience, and your ability to rise above the pain. And in that moment, I knew I would pass this test. Not easily, not without pain, but I would pass it. I had made my choice. I would confront them, yes, but only when I was ready. Only when the truth was undeniable. Only when I could ensure that the people who had betrayed me would face the consequences, not in their way, but in mine. The house, once a place of warmth, laughter, and trust, now felt heavy with tension. Every step, every glance, every interaction was a reminder of the web of deceit that surrounded me. But for the first time since the discovery, I felt a sense of purpose. I was no longer lost in confusion or despair. I was focused, determined, and ready. Confrontation or silence. I had chosen both. Silence first, confrontation later. Observation first, exposure later. Patience first, empowerment later. And as I closed my eyes that night, I knew that the coming days would decide everything. I had seen the cracks beneath the surface. I had discovered the betrayal. And now it was time to prepare for the moment when the truth would finally be revealed, when justice, in whatever form I chose, would be served. Betrayal is a peculiar kind of pain. It doesn't announce itself with shouts or thunder. It seeps quietly, invisibly, until it floods every corner of your mind, leaving no room for reason or peace. And when it comes from the people you trust most, the people you believe will protect you, love you, and stand beside you, it cuts deeper than anything else. By this point, I had seen enough. I had the evidence, the proof, the messages, and the photos. I had watched them carefully, noticed the subtle gestures, the secretive whispers, the fleeting glances that betrayed their hidden connection. But seeing it on paper, on a screen, confirmed what my gut had already known. This wasn't just a minor deception or a mistake. This was deliberate, conscious betrayal aimed directly at my heart. I remember the night I overheard them again. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, not really. I was passing by the living room, a cup of tea in my hand, when I caught the sound of their voices. Low, urgent, intimate, my heart stopped. I froze in place, feeling my chest tighten as I listened. She said something that made my blood run cold. "We can't let him find out yet. He's starting to suspect." My father's voice followed, quiet but unmistakable. But we have to be careful. One wrong move, and everything falls apart. Every word was like a hammer hitting my chest. Every syllable confirmed the truth I had been struggling to accept. They weren't just hiding a secret. They were conspiring. They were planning, scheming, and protecting themselves while my trust crumbled under their feet. I wanted to confront them then and there. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to shatter their illusions as they had shattered mine. But I held back, because anger, raw and unrestrained, would only play into their hands. I reminded myself, patience, observation, strategy, control. That was my weapon now. In the following days, I began watching them even more closely. Every interaction, no matter how mundane, was now loaded with meaning. The way she laughed at a joke he made, just a little too long.